Vicky, Mike. Loredana, Fontana?
No?
Ragazzi, a meno che non sia ragazzi.
Joe! Hey! Hey! Hey, ciao Joe! How are you?
Well, I'm very good, thank you.
Okay.
Everybody else good?
Yes, thanks. Thank you.
Well, this is the part of Club Joe where you get to ask questions, and any kind of questions, and we'll just go around the room and I'll try to answer every question that you've got, all right? So who's got a question? Who's first?
Abbiamo troppe.
You start?
Too many matches, too many.
Oh, okay.
The first one could be, how can you write Secret Prayer from the Crystal Plant? I just love it too much. It's such a great song.
Thank you.
For me, it means so much, and so I want to ask you, how can you write it? Which is the idea behind it?
Well, the first part of the answer is that it's a secret. That's why I called it a secret prayer. So, but that sort of lets everybody make the song about whatever they want. So it's your own secret prayer.
It's great.
And but I suppose one of the things that made the song possible to write was my idea that I wasn't going to make any recorded demos before making the album, which is unusual. Usually you make recordings to find out if your song is going to work and if you want to change the instrumentation, anything like that. But for that record, I did everything on paper. And not manuscript, but just little chord patterns and things like that. I made it very plain so that when I got into the rehearsal with all the rest of the musicians, the first time I heard the song would be with the band. And so I would adjust my ears to
More
to the fact
spontaneous.
that it would be more raw, I guess, simplified arrangements that only a band could play. So I wouldn't start thinking about the production of the record before hearing the band play. And so that gave me the courage to just have one guitar. You know what I mean? And make the song very simple. And that changes the way you play. When you know there's not going to be 2 keyboards and 4 rhythm guitars, you write the song differently. And so I think that makes the melody much stronger.
Thank you very much.
Joe.
Yeah.
You have explored all in the guitar, the vibrato, the low amp, the legato, the technique. Which is the part that you want to explore more of the guitar? The other part of the guitar you want to explore more?
Well, oddly enough, the most important thing, I think, is that the sound that you make with your fingers is what you're trying to express inside. And sometimes it's just an amp that, you know, sort of just passes the way you're feeling right out.
Stai filmando? Sì, sì.
Other times
Faccio
you
vedere.
do lots of things to the crystal, like
Faccio vedere.
delay and something like that.
Fai la mano, vedi il filo.
Emotions are very complex. Sometimes they have a very straightforward idea. You know, such boogie, it's very easy to project something like that. Whereas a secret prayer, it's much more delicate. So you have to think, how do I play all those notes and yet make it sound soft? So it always starts with what is the emotion behind the story of the song. So whatever that pushes me to do, then that's
Non
what
faremo.
Hello Joe, I come from Istanbul, Turkey.
Oh, fantastic.
E dove?
And
Istanbul.
what inspires so much to you so much about passion?
Oh, wow, you can give that to me later.
Yes, it's a gift from my grandfather to you. It's from 1970.
Wow, fantastic. That's great. I don't know if anybody else knows Asia Baisel, a fantastic
Yes.
musician, singer, writer, folk, we call him Anatolian, right? Folk music, spectacular, really something. I don't know very little about what he sings about, but I know it's about the land and about
About mostly France.
yeah. and growing up and being human beings being connected to the earth. It's very special.
Questo qualcosa secondo lui come si sta evolvendo il mondo chitarristico?
È una domandone, eh?
Dai. Cioè c'è troppa esagerazione, c'è chi vuole stare. Boh.
Bravo.
A me sembra una battaglia. Viene tracciati tipo il buon gusto. A lui piace.
L'eccesso
A me
di
piace per il buon
tecnicismo.
gusto, esatto.
It was 2003, 2004. That was the tour that we got. So we played it every night. But we can't, we have about 200 songs now, so we can only play about 25 songs per show. So most of the songs.
Ma se devi anche con YouTube adesso c'è una generazione.
Sometimes we go out on tour, we have a new album, so we add, at least 10 more songs.
Chiedi.
So it's difficult to
Tu sei capace a tradurre?
find time to play all of
Sì, no, ma se non ce la prova tu, se non ce la fai io
No, digli tanto con gli inglesi.
I'm sure we'll get back to the set sooner or later. And similar to the songs on Engines of Creation, that was, that came out in 2000. And that was really an experiment
è arrivato.
to see if you could blend guitar playing and soloing with trance and techno music. Which was just enormously fun to do. It was a very artistic venture. Working with Eric Cotier, we recorded it in such an unusual way, without any microphones or speakers. Everything was direct. The composing method was more unusual. It was a little bit more cut and paste. Since there were no musicians around, we could instantly change arrangements and we could learn how to replay everything. So it sort of broke down the barriers of composition, where we could do songs like Attack or Champagne, which is very hard to play the way. But it was great to have that, and then it would sort of inspire me to play guitar.
Aspettare che si gira un attimo.
Very unusual, but it was very difficult to perform live in that same way. And of course, my audience who likes rock didn't really understand it, and the audience who likes techno really don't like guitar, so it just sort of, it was like an album that we put on a boat and you push off in the sea and then wave goodbye. But I love working on it, Yeah.
The history say that you teach to play guitar to Kirk Hammett, to Steve Vai, and more other famous guitarists.
Yeah.
Who is the guitarist that give you more satisfaction?
You mean out of that group of people?
Just in general, I guess.
Oh, well, all the students were great. All the guys that you mentioned, we know who they are because they have a lot of talent and they have a lot of personal drive, and they have the courage to try to push themselves as far as they could on record and in front of people. So it takes a certain amount of fearless attitude.
Maybe Steve Vai is near you, or your way to play.
Perhaps. I think all of them, I mean, my hope would be that all of the students would be better than me, that they would learn what I could play and that they would somehow get better at it. I mean, that's what you hope, especially when you're teaching the younger generation. If you're teaching someone who's 14, you expect them to surpass you so that music moves forward, in civilization, You don't want things to regress, you want things to progress. So that's an important thing. And I guess I learned thinking the same way when I was trying to be like Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page and Alan Holdsworth. I'm trying to learn what they're doing, but then interpret it in my own style, with my own music.
There will be a future for Chickenfoot program?
Yeah, Chickenfoot will go back into the studio in late January, early February. The original 4 guys, and we'll record a new record, and then.
It's the same group, yes.
Yeah.
With Chad and so on.
Oh yeah. And we'll see what happens. We're not sure when the record would get released or when we would tour, but at least we know we have a recording schedule.
strange way to see Charles Smith, not funky drummer, but more rock drummer, which you can put in Red Hot Chili Peppers. And also your way to play is more rocker than.
Yeah, I think so. I think all players.
Strange,
All players can only play naturally, you know, and with their surroundings, so to speak. So when I'm playing with, you know, Mike Anthony on bass, that's very different than Stu Ham. So I'm going to react differently, and they'll play differently as well. So I think everybody is reacting to what they're hearing. And since we're an original band and we'd never played together before, with the exception of Sammy and Mike, you know, we just create a different sound that we weren't planning on. So it's very spontaneous every time we get together.
But it's very together. I mean, there are some parts where bass, guitar, and drums go exactly the same, and it sounds very spontaneous. It doesn't sound as it has been going, it's been achieved through a lot of rehearsal. It just sounds like it.
We have
it
never
just
rehearsed.
happened. You know, it just happened.
Yeah, we've never
Which
rehearsed.
you get that from that record. I mean,
Yeah.
at least I did.
Yeah, well, it's definitely, as I said, because we've never had the luxury of rehearsing at all. When we get together, we have a few hours to learn some new song and to record it right away, and then we move on to the next piece of music. That's because time is not a luxury that we have.
Yes. We also have another question, Matteo and I, because what we appreciate, I think it's the same for everybody, but what we appreciate the most in your music is your taste for melody and your ability, more, not that you don't have the technique, obviously, but more than that, is your ability to hit the right tones and the right chords and the right notes, which touch you. So his question is, how do you find the music scene today? I mean, is there not too much competition, too much technicism? Is there not? I mean, we find that he finds that there is a lot of, you know, people trying to go faster and to do more and to do more complicated stuff. Sometimes you might lose
Dove si sta andando con la
the
tecnica.
point. You know, the technique is taking over the
Well,
the
you know,
soul. You know,
the most popular form of music now is pop music. It's a combination of hip hop and dance, you know, music. And there's hardly any guitar in it. Most of it is actually sampled guitar, so there's no technique there.
but I think he meant more like in
Yeah,
you know,
there's
like,
no danger there. In most rock, which is, I mean, there's very little regular rock music out now. There's mainly, there's metal. There's lots of different forms of metal music. But what they're trying to express is something very different, and so that pushes them into a different technical area. It's funny when I've been asked to be a judge at guitar contests, I find very often that you get a young player, maybe 15 years old, with fantastic technique.
that's what we meant. Yeah, exactly.
And they put on a great show. And I always vote for the kid who can walk on stage and in 3 minutes play a song that is exactly what he wanted to present and not make a mistake and play the right technique for the right kind of a song.
Yes.
And what I find what the other judges mainly like to reward is when a guitar player, regardless of age, tries to play more like my generation.
I see.
But even if it's out of context, which really bothers me. In other words, if I was listening to Slipknot and I heard a blues solo, I would say, well, what's that?
Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. And so I've learned when I was a teacher never to discriminate against a student style. If that's what they like and that's what they're trying to achieve, you have to teach them the tools so that they can actually play that way. They can do it. So if you're Jeff Loomis, your job is to play a lot of notes because the music is very aggressive. If you're playing in Meshuggah, I mean, what else are you going to do, right? I mean, you really have to practice and you have to learn how to count
Yes.
if you're going to play that kind of music because it's very complicated. But the music is not supposed to give you the same feeling as Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, you go for something else.
Right.
Maybe.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just different. That's all. It's a new time, and so there's a new message that comes along with not only the composition and the sound, but what the other guys have to do in the band, what the bass player and the drummer and the guitar player have to learn how to master in order to be convincing about that music. But I mean, music always changes. I mean, it's consistently synthesizing. Just like I mentioned about pop music, when hip hop got really big, everyone was worried, is this where music is going? And the only answer is yes, for a little while.
Yeah.
It will always change. 3 years, there will be a new group of young people, and they will demand a new sound and a new rhythm. It's just the way that it goes. That's why ragtime isn't popular anymore, or swing music, or bebop, or any of that stuff. It's just it's faded. Time moves on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, first of all, thanks for coming here. It's for me an honor to meet you.
Thank you.
And I have two questions for you. One is similar to the one that my friend gave you, but it's about Love Thing. Love Thing is, for me, just an amazing love song. And now you're making a podcast before the album is released, so we know more or less the meaning between every song. In the past, it wasn't possible. So I would like to know which are the meanings behind the feelings and the meanings behind Love Thing. And the second question is, your surname Satriani is for us Italian.
Yes.
Sounds similar. So I would like to know how you feel when you are coming to Italy, and which is your relation with our country, how you feel with us.
Okay. Well, Love Thing was a love song for my wife, and it was actually very difficult to write because it has a very strong chordal melody to it that starts the song. And when I started to write it, I was thinking perhaps that would be the main melody, and I would somehow be able to arrange the song to have this melody. And we actually recorded a version of it in 2 separate keys with the Bissonette brothers, and I think once with earlier with Jeff. And they were sort of disasters because the music never took off, and I couldn't really figure it out. So I thought, well, I'm obviously doing this the wrong way. And one day when I sat down to work on it, I thought, well, maybe it should be a counterpoint type of song, that the chord melody, maybe if it's not on electric guitar, I can soften it, and there would be this other melody that came on top. So I tried to think of, when I tried to play guitar over it, it just sounded like too much guitar. So I imagined that I was a singer, and I was trying to figure out, well, who's the right singer to imagine over this? And for some reason, I landed on the idea of Chris Isaak. I don't know if you know who Chris Isaak is.
Yes.
He's an American singer. He kind of represents like the 50s. He has sort of what we call a retro act, wears suits and sings like a crooner.
And goes on the beach with Helena Christensen. That's
There you go, yeah.
That's a different
But
thing.
if you imagine that, then you can understand where I was thinking. A guy who sings in a baritone, who sings softly, and who lets the end of the phrases ring out. In other words, it weren't short words, they were long phrases. And so I thought, okay, maybe that should be my approach. So I worked on that, and then I brought it back to the band, and I said, okay, same song, but completely different melody on top, and it changed everything. And then, this is very technical, I know, I took, since I decided I wanted it to be a wah-wah guitar, and I was going to be representing a baritone singer, this guitar sound was going to have to be rather wide, not small, or upper pitch like Flying in a Blue Dream, or Friends, very high up. It was actually going to have to be a thick melody. So I thought, well, that means I have to get the rhythm guitars to somehow be wide but sort of transparent. So I had this old Martin acoustic guitar, a 1948 0021. I brought it to Gary Brower, my luthier, and I said, you've got to make this guitar work perfectly in tune when it's in an open E tuning. So now there are 2 sides to this. So he got Buzzy Featon to create a special intonation set so that I could play these chords all up and down the neck, and it would sound completely in tune, which is very hard to do on an old acoustic guitar. And then, this is the funny part, we took the acoustic guitar, which had a Sunrise pickup in it, and we plugged it into a Zoom. And the Zoom is what you hear in stereo, with chorus and delay on it, and then also a direct, just straight into the recording console. So we have these 2 or 3 performances of these acoustic guitars that I can strum very easily, and they can create a very
Like a
transparent,
carpet.
beautiful sound. Yeah, and then this fat guitar with a wah-wah would come in. Now, then this is a very long answer, but
Oh, we don't mind. We don't mind.
Just speak.
this song took almost a year to figure out. It was just so hard to figure out. And then the melody, of course, when you play through a wah-wah at a normal loud volume, there's feedback everywhere. And the wah-wahs are extremely noisy.
Yes.
And as soon as they hit resonant frequencies of whatever room you're in, you get feedback. So we had to record it very quietly, about this quiet. So the music would be playing, and I'd be blah 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 blah. But it was very quiet. I had to lean into the speakers so I could really hear what I was playing. But that allowed the notes to kind of die out a little bit. We needed the gain high to create the fat sound, but the volume low to keep the sustain lower.
Fantastic song.
It really took a lot of work. When I look back at
Yeah,
it,
but the result is fantastic.
Yes.
thank you.
Also, always you do is for your wife.
Yes, yeah. And as far as my heritage, my
Yes.
mother's family is from Bari, and my father's
Bari.
family is from Bobbio, which is not too far from here. Maybe an hour or something like that, hour and a
Bobbio.
half
No.
drive from here.
Yeah,
And,
Cremona, credo sia.
And I have lots of cousins here.
Ah,
My guest list has 22 cousins on
Really?
it tonight. So, yeah.
thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
it's great. I love coming to Italy, of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
How do you set the saturator in combination with your house?
It depends on the tour.
Is your main source?